Fog draped the coastline in a grey shroud, swallowing the outlines of rusting ships that lay beached like ancient beasts. The mariner's grace stood among them, its bow tilted toward the cracked mud as though paying penance to the earth. The air smelled of salt, iron, and the quiet surrender of things long forgotten. From a distance, it looked like a ship caught mid-fall, paused just before touching the ground forever. Eli Marron arrived before dawn, his boots crunching over brittle shells. He didn't speak much anymore. Words had never fixed machines, and he trusted the sound of metal over people. The town council had called him, muttering about a tilt that no one could explain. He had been their mechanic once, before his hands began shaking and his memory of the sea grew sharper than the present. He ran a palm along the hull. The metal was colder than the morning air. No corrosion explained the lean. Beneath the keel, the ground had sagged into a smooth curve, as if something below had exhaled. He crouched, flicked on his flashlight, and froze. The mud glistened with a faint shimmer that wasn't water. His compass needle spun, refusing to settle. Eli dug with slow, deliberate strokes. The spade rang against something hard, too hard. He brushed away the mud and found a surface beneath the earth unlike any he had seen, polished, mirror-smooth, without weld or rivet. When he tapped it, the sound traveled far, echoing like a bell struck underwater. He worked through the day, uncovering more of the surface. It curved outward, like the skin of another vessel hidden below. The light shifted strangely across it, bending around edges that weren't there. A low hum threaded through the ground, subtle at first, then steady as a heartbeat. He paused, wiping sweat from his brow. For a moment he thought he saw the soil breathing, rising and falling, as though the earth beneath the ship were alive. The mariner's grace groaned above him, its hull creaking, rivets straining. The ship leaned another inch, metal screaming softly against its own weight. Night came quickly. The yard lights flickered, casting pale halos through the mist. Eli knelt again, brushing away another layer of dirt. Lines began to appear, thin, luminous carvings that pulsed with a rhythm too deliberate to be natural. Symbols ran in arcs across the metallic skin, forming patterns that seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at them. His breath fogged the surface, and for an instant, he thought the glow brightened in response. He pulled his hand back, heart pounding. The hum deepened, resonating through his chest. It wasn't just sound, it was intention. He stood slowly, stepping backward, eyes locked on the faintly glowing lines beneath the ship. The fog thickened, wrapping the scrapyard in silence. The only sound left was that low, endless vibration, neither mechanical nor alive, but something that felt aware. As the first wave broke against the shore, the old ship tilted further, bow sinking toward the gleaming metal below. Eli didn't run. He just stared, the reflection of the impossible flickering in his eyes, while the earth whispered a sound no machine had ever made. By morning, the mist had lifted, revealing the ship frozen in its unnatural bow. Reporters and townsfolk clustered beyond a flimsy fence, but only Eli remained inside the boundary, crouched beside the hole he had carved through the night. His tools lay scattered, their metal warped and magnetized. The ground hummed beneath his boots. He pressed his hand to it, steady, rhythmic, alive. He widened the pit with a shovel, then bare hands. Beneath the crust of dirt, the strange surface stretched far beyond sight, curving downward like the shell of some buried beast. The texture wasn't steel or aluminum. It absorbed light instead of reflecting it, smooth as water but colder than ice. When his glove brushed the metal, a tremor passed up his arm, and for a heartbeat, he thought he felt a pulse. A convoy arrived by noon, government trucks, equipment humming, faces masked in indifference. They called it a geological anomaly. Eli didn't argue. He stood to the side as they erected scanners and sensors, their devices flickering and dying one after another. The lead scientist cursed under her breath. "It's like the readings are feeding back from nowhere," she muttered. Eli leaned closer, eyes tracing the curve of the buried vessel. The part he'd uncovered bore faint, geometric patterns, repeating sequences that resembled language but defied translation. They shimmered, rearranging when the light shifted. He whispered without realizing, "It's not buried. It's hiding, As dusk settled, the team packed up, leaving behind lights that flickered uselessly against the dark. Eli remained, his thoughts circling like gulls over the tide. Machines had always told him the truth, but this one spoke in riddles. He crouched near the symbols, tracing one with a gloved finger. The hum responded, softer now, coaxing rather than warning. He removed his glove. The cold bit deep into his skin, but curiosity anchored him. His fingertip brushed the carved line, and the metal rippled like liquid glass. The glow surged outward in concentric rings, bathing the pit in pale blue light. Eli staggered back, but the vibration held him in place. A faint sound followed, high and tonal, almost human but mechanized, speaking in chords instead of words. He recognized no language, yet the meaning reached him all the same: acknowledgement. The light condensed in front of him, forming an outline, vaguely human, shimmering, its features unfinished. The air burned with ozone. Every loose object in the yard rose half an inch, hovering weightlessly before settling again. The shape flickered once, then dissolved, leaving silence and the echo of the hum fading back into the soil. Eli stood trembling, hands still raised toward the emptiness. The markings on the metal had changed, now forming a single symbol that pulsed like a heartbeat. He stared at it until the last light died. He understood only one thing: whatever slept beneath the mariner's grace was aware of him now. And it was waiting. Time fractured around the scrapyard like broken glass. Waves froze mid-crash, then fell again, as if reality forgot its rhythm. The mariner's grace no longer leaned, it hovered, its hull trembling inches above the ground. The metal beneath glowed through the soil, alive now, no longer pretending to be buried. Eli stood in the pit, his breath misting in air that flickered between cold and heat. Every sound carried a faint echo, delayed by seconds. Around him, the world stuttered. The researchers returned, faces pale, voices cracking under radio static. Monitors overloaded, graphs spiraling into unreadable chaos. Someone shouted about impossible readings: density zero, mass inversion, temperature flux. It meant nothing. Eli wasn't listening. The hum beneath his feet had changed. It had learned his heartbeat. He felt it call to him, a rhythm that matched his pulse. Against orders, he stepped closer. The metal surface split along its center, not tearing but opening, parting like liquid shadow. Light poured upward, blinding, then softened into a tunnel leading down into silence. The others screamed for him to stop. He didn't. Inside, the walls moved as if breathing, geometry folding, rearranging, reforming symbols that pulsed with thought. His footsteps made no sound. The space was larger than it could be, stretching beyond physics. At its heart, a chamber pulsed with blue light, and within it lay what he first thought was a skeleton. Human, unmistakably human, wrapped in translucent crystal. He stared, disbelieving. This wasn't alien. It was one of his own. He reached for the control panel etched into the floor. The markings responded like liquid mercury, displaying sequences of symbols that shifted into words, his language, then none. The meaning seeped into his mind without translation. We tried. We failed. We hid it from ourselves. The realization struck harder than any machine noise. The buried vessel wasn't from another world, it was a relic of Earth's forgotten age, a civilization erased by its own ambition. The old cargo ship had been placed above it deliberately, a monument disguised as decay, a warning disguised as junk. Eli's fingers brushed the crystal casing, and images flooded his thoughts: cities made of light, oceans floating in the sky, humanity reaching beyond the stars and collapsing under the weight of its own creation. The being within the chamber had once been a guardian, a mechanic like him, the last to shut it down. The ship outside groaned. The ground shuddered. The air fractured again, splitting into shards of color and vibration. Eli stumbled backward as the vessel beneath the earth began to awaken fully. The lights carved spirals into the fog, symbols crawling up the sides of the mariner's grace, merging steel with alien symmetry. He fell to his knees, clutching his head as the hum crescendoed into thunder. Then came the voice, not sound, but resonance, deeper than thought: repair complete. Sequence resuming. Eli's eyes widened. The world around him bent inward. He had unearthed the impossible, and it was alive. The sky split open in silence. Light poured down, not from the sun but from the ship itself, rising inch by inch as if pulled by its own memory. The mariner's grace and the buried vessel fused, metal flowing like molten glass, reshaping into something vast and whole. Every rivet, every beam, every symbol aligned with mathematical precision. Soldiers surrounded the site, shouting orders that dissolved into static. Nothing they did mattered now. The air had weight. Eli stood at the edge of the pit, his eyes reflecting the storm of light. The hum inside him resonated with the ship's rhythm, the same pulse he'd felt beneath the mud now echoing through his veins. A shape emerged from the merging structure, half machine, half monument, its surface alive with language. It didn't threaten. It waited. The message wasn't spoken but written across the air, carved in soundless vibration. Humanity reached too far once. We burned the sky and hid the proof beneath our own graves. Eli understood. The machine wasn't a weapon. It was a memory, sealed until the species that built it had learned enough restraint to face it again. The cargo ship had been the seal, the mechanical lock to keep it sleeping until someone human and worthy listened. He felt the ship's awareness brush against his thoughts. It offered choice, not command. It could open fully, revealing everything humanity had lost, the power to create worlds, to rewrite matter, to ascend beyond flesh. But it warned him too. The last ones who awakened it destroyed themselves trying to control what they didn't understand. The hum deepened, patient, waiting for an answer. Eli took a slow breath. He had spent his life fixing things others broke. Machines made sense. They failed when neglected, and they healed when cared for. Humanity, he thought, wasn't much different. Maybe this wasn't meant to be a discovery. Maybe it was a test. He stepped forward, touching the living metal one final time. Energy surged up his arm, searing but gentle. Circuits ignited, walls rippled with white fire. He understood what the ship needed, a mechanic's hand to shut it down again, not with destruction but precision. He rewired the conduits manually, bypassing the core's awakening sequence, overloading its own containment in reverse. His flesh burned, but his expression never changed. The voice spoke once more. "Are you sure?" He whispered back, "We'll earn it this time." Light consumed everything. The world froze in that moment, no explosion, no collapse, only stillness. When dawn came, the sky was clear. The ship stood upright again, silent and inert, its seams fused into ordinary rust. The soldiers found no power readings, no strange metal, only a single wrench embedded deep in the hull. The town rebuilt the fence and moved on. They called it an old warship and left it to decay. No one spoke of Eli Marron again, but sometimes, when the tide was low, people said they heard a faint hum beneath the ground, steady and patient, like a heartbeat waiting for the right hands to wake it. Humanity had passed its first test, by choosing silence over glory.